The weight of sunshine. The University of South Florida campus sprawled before him, a bewildering maze of brick buildings and palm trees shimmering under the August sun. He'd made it. Escaped the cramped apartment, the whispers of doubt back home, the shadow of schools the local paper had bluntly called failure factories. Here things were supposed to be different. He was supposed to be different. Trouble found him before he even found his dorm. A hold on his registration, flagged in the system. Financial aid, the bedrock of his entire plan, was frozen. Panic, cold and sharp, pierced through the humidity. He pictured the forms, the deadlines, the sheer precariousness of his presence here. This couldn't be happening. He marched into the administrative building, a fortress of cool air and fluorescent lights. The woman behind the counter offered a practiced, weary smile. Malik explained, his voice tighter than he intended. She typed, clicked, sighed. "There's a flag from your previous school district, something about residency verification. It needs clearance before aid can be disbursed." Residency? He'd lived in the same place his whole life. It felt like a phantom limb from his past, reaching out to pull him back. This was how it worked, wasn't it? Some bureaucratic snag, some invisible barrier designed to trip him up. His internal cynic, honed sharp by years of observing the system, sneered. "See? Rigged. Trust yourself, Malik. Only yourself." This conviction, that self-reliance was the only shield against a world designed to hold him down, was the bedrock of his resolve. "Need some help navigating the bullpen?" A smooth voice cut in. Malik turned. Another young black man, older, maybe a junior or senior, stood there radiating an easy confidence Malik envied. He wore a polo shirt with a small logo Malik didn't recognize, maybe a club or fraternity. "Happens to the best of us, especially first years. Name's David." David listened patiently, then nodded. "Yeah, interdistrict flags can be messy. There's a specific office you gotta talk to. Sometimes helps to have someone walk you through it. I volunteer with FAAME, the support program for black male students. We deal with this stuff." He paused. "Sometimes a little prayer doesn't hurt either, you know." Malik stiffened. Prayer? He hadn't stepped inside a church willingly since his grandmother's funeral. He remembered the platitudes, the fervent calls to a God who seemed conspicuously absent when rent was due or sirens wailed down the block. Faith felt like a luxury, a soft answer to hard problems. "Nah, man, I got this," Malik said, forcing a dismissive smile. "Appreciate it, though." He needed logic, persistence, not wishful thinking. Relying on others, especially on something as intangible as faith, felt like weakness. He turned back to the counter, doubling down on his demands, ignoring David's quiet departure. He would fix this himself. He had to. His phone buzzed. An email from the financial aid office. Subject, urgent action required. He opened it, his stomach twisting. It wasn't just residency. The flag had triggered a full review of his high school transcripts, citing inconsistencies linked to the data discrepancies reported in his under-resourced district. His admission itself might be under scrutiny. The ground, which had felt shaky before, now seemed to crumble beneath his feet. The unexpected twist wasn't just a hurdle. It was a potential sinkhole threatening to swallow his future whole. His choice to go it alone suddenly felt terrifyingly inadequate. Malik threw himself at the problem with grim determination, fueled by caffeine and the gnawing fear of failure. He haunted administrative offices, made endless calls, and fired off emails, each interaction leaving him feeling smaller, more powerless against the institutional gears. He secured a part-time job washing dishes off campus, the greasy heat a stark contrast to the air-conditioned lecture halls he barely had time to attend. Sleep became a luxury, measured in snatched hours between shifts and frantic attempts to catch up on readings. He saw David occasionally, a friendly nod in the library, a wave across the quad. Once, David tried to invite him to a brother-to-brother meeting, mentioning free pizza and study groups. Malik mumbled an excuse about work. Accepting help now felt like admitting defeat, reinforcing the lie that he wasn't strong enough on his own. His self-reliance had become a cage. The inevitable happened. His grades, already shaky, began to plummet. The history professor, whose lectures initially sparked excitement, now looked at him with concerned disappointment. The long hours washing dishes barely covered his immediate expenses, let alone the looming tuition bill if his aid didn't materialize. The pressure mounted, a physical weight on his chest. He snapped at roommates, skipped meals, felt a constant low-grade hum of anxiety that frayed his nerves. He was trying, harder than he ever had, but every effort seemed to dig him deeper into the hole. The breaking point came during a calculus midterm. Staring at the equations, Malik's mind went blank. The numbers swam, meaningless symbols mocking his exhaustion. He could feel the minutes ticking away, each tick amplifying the frantic pounding in his chest. Panic seized him. He remembered whispered comments about affirmative action, the subtle questioning of whether he truly belonged. Now, failing this test felt like confirming their doubts and his own deepest fears. He pushed his paper away, the stark white space a reflection of his own emptiness, and walked out, the professor's confused call echoing behind him. The word echoed in the hollow space inside him. He felt beaten, not by a single blow, but by 1,000 relentless cuts. He was losing the dream, losing himself. Just when it seemed impossible for things to get worse, his phone rang. It was his manager from the restaurant. "Malik? Yeah, listen. Corporate's cutting back hours across the board. We gotta let you go. Sorry, kid." The line went dead. Malik stared at the phone, the screen reflecting the harsh sunlight. No job, failing grades, financial aid in jeopardy. He slid down the wall, the fight draining out of him, leaving only a vast, echoing despair. He was adrift in the storm, and the shore had just vanished. Days blurred into a haze of anxiety and sleepless nights. Malik avoided campus, holed up in his dorm room, the walls closing in. He was scrolling numbly through job listings when David knocked. Malik almost didn't answer, but something made him crack the door open. David didn't pry, just offered a quiet, "Heard things got rough. Wanted to see if you were okay." He held out a folded flyer for a campus event, something about navigating university resources, sponsored by FAAME and the Institute on Black Life. Malik started to refuse, but David spoke again, his voice softer. "Look, man, I almost dropped out my sophomore year." Malik looked up, surprised. David, who seemed to glide through campus life. "Financial stuff, family drama back home, felt like I was drowning," David continued, his gaze distant for a moment. "Thought I had to handle it all myself, you know? Be the strong black man. But it was breaking me." He met Malik's eyes. "My mentor at the Black Faculty Staff Association, and honestly, my faith, finding folks who understood, who prayed with me, not just for me, that made the difference. Faith isn't about pretending problems don't exist, Malik. It's about where you find the strength to face them." David's honesty was unexpected, a crack in Malik's cynicism. Maybe faith wasn't weakness, but a different kind of strength, rooted in community and shared struggle. A flicker of something, not quite hope, but a possibility, ignited within him. This revelation shifted his perspective. His problem wasn't just his failure, but a shared experience, and maybe the solution wasn't purely individual. Armed with this fragile new insight, Malik decided to try again. He emailed the financial aid office, mentioning David and the FAME program, asking for guidance on the appeal process. He even attended the resource event David had mentioned, hovering awkwardly at the back but listening intently. For the first time in weeks, a path forward seemed dimly visible. He felt a cautious optimism. Perhaps he could navigate this after all. The response from financial aid came quickly, polite, professional, and devastating. While they acknowledged his inquiry and the support program, the transcript inconsistencies required formal clearance from his original district, a process notoriously slow and complex. Furthermore, his failing midterm grade had triggered automatic academic probation, jeopardizing any potential aid reinstatement. His brief surge of hope crashed against the unyielding wall of bureaucracy and his own academic record. It felt like a trap. He had opened himself up, considered a different path, only to be slammed back down harder than before. The system wasn't just indifferent, it felt actively hostile. David's experience suddenly seemed like a fluke, an exception that proved the rule. Malik's internal antagonist roared back to life. See? Foolish. Nothing changes. You're alone in this. He stumbled out of the library, the email burning on his phone screen. Probation. No aid. No job. He felt hollowed out, the last vestiges of fight extinguished. This was his nadir, his absolute worst moment. He thought of calling home, but pictured his mother's strained voice, the unspoken pressure for him to succeed, to be the one who made it out. That felt like another weight he couldn't bear. He was adrift, sinking, and the darkness felt absolute. What was the point of even trying anymore? The question hung in the humid Tampa air, heavy and unanswered. Malik walked aimlessly, the manicured lawns and imposing buildings of USF blurring through a film of despair. He found himself near the edge of campus, the sounds of traffic a dull roar. Then, cutting through the noise, came music. Not the thumping bass from a passing car, but singing. Rich, layered harmonies, a Hammond organ's soulful swell. It spilled from the open doors of a small, unassuming church nestled just off campus, a place he'd never noticed before. He stopped, hesitant. Churches represented judgment, unanswered questions, the church hurt he'd heard others talk about. Yet the music pulled at something deep within him. It wasn't just sound. It felt like resilience, like voices that had known struggle but still chose to sing. He leaned against a palm tree hidden in the shadows, just listening. A particular line soaring above the others struck him. He may not come when you want him, but he's right on time. Simple words, words he'd probably heard his grandmother hum, but they landed differently now. Not as a dismissal of pain, but as an acknowledgement of a different timeline, a different kind of power operating beyond his frantic efforts. In that moment, something shifted. It wasn't a lightning bolt, but a quiet dawning, a sudden spiritual manifestation in the mundane. He saw his relentless self-reliance not as strength, but as a kind of blindness. He'd been so focused on handling everything himself, on proving his worth through solitary struggle, that he'd shut himself off from the very support David had offered, the community the music represented, the possibility of a strength greater than his own. The lie that he was alone and had to rely solely on his own flawed power dissolved. The truth emerged, quiet but clear. Strength wasn't about never falling. It was about how you got back up, and sometimes you couldn't get up alone. Faith wasn't about easy answers. It was about trusting in something beyond the immediate crisis, finding purpose and identity rooted not in circumstance, but in something deeper, something connected. He understood with sudden, piercing clarity the choice he'd made back in that administrative office, the choice to reject help, to reject community, to reject the possibility of faith, had been the wrong one. This epiphany wasn't just intellectual. It was a profound emotional release, a quiet unburdening. It didn't magically erase his problems, but it changed his relationship to them. He felt lighter, empowered not by arrogance, but by a nascent humility and a flicker of genuine hope. The next morning, Malik found David. He didn't offer excuses, just a simple, "You were right, I need help." Together, they went to the FAAME office. They contacted the Institute on Black Life. They met with an academic advisor who helped map out a plan for appealing the probation, focusing on the documented issues with his previous district and his commitment to utilizing campus support services. Malik started attending FAAME study groups, finding solidarity and practical advice. He even tentatively joined David at an informal campus ministry gathering, finding not judgment, but acceptance and shared experiences. The appeal process was still arduous, the academic climb steep, but Malik wasn't facing it alone anymore. He was drawing strength from the community around him and from a quiet, growing faith, a faith tested by doubt, but emerging stronger. He learned to pray, not for problems to disappear, but for the fortitude to face them. He was learning to replace the weight of solitary struggle with the anchor of shared belief. Weeks later, his academic probation was lifted. A plan was in place for his financial aid. The path ahead was still challenging, but the crushing despair was gone, replaced by a quiet determination. He closed his eyes, the breeze cool against his face. A simple, heartfelt prayer formed in his mind, not of demand, but of gratitude. Gratitude for second chances, for community, for the unexpected grace found in the midst of the storm. He opened his eyes, the vastness of the water reflecting the newfound space within him. He had arrived in Tampa seeking independence. He was discovering something far more valuable: connection, resilience, and the quiet, enduring power of faith.